Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Hi, Eric. Well, hi, Cody. How are you? Love seeing some familiar names pop on. We'll give it just a quick second. I'll go ahead and say hello. I'm Candy Tillman. I run 50 Strong. Thank you all so much for being here. 50 Strong is really about supporting the collaborative efforts of industry stakeholders. And today we're here to talk about a really important program that many of my partners are diligently kind of helping to advance forward. So we so appreciate you all being here. This will be recorded. So you're welcome to watch it again or share it with a friend. But again, thank you all so much for being here. Before I start, I do just want to say the DoD nor any service departments endorse any company, sponsor, or their products or services. This is an industry-led share session. And so I ask that you keep that in mind as we are having these conversations. A little bit about 50 Strong, and then we are going to go right into our conversation, our special guests. 50 Strong is possible thanks to our industry partners. We have two main series of events. One is the 50 Strong Employer Connect that has a really strong emphasis on military affiliated students. And then we also run the 50 Strong SkillBridge Connect. This is part of where we're focused on today. We started this series in January, and it has three components, one of which is a service member Q&A, an employer Q&A, which is what we're here for today. And then we also do monthly direct networking events between service members and SkillBridge providers. The goal is quite simply this: to help employers advance their efforts for utilization of the DoD SkillBridge program. And a large part of what I've seen, I've been navigating the SkillBridge space for almost 4 years now. It took me the first 3 years of stumbling. But really what we've seen is that too many employers are also stumbling unnecessarily. And so this is really an effort to just come together and share best practices and what we're all learning. 50 Strong is really about direct exposure to military-ready employers. So last week we had a large event for student veterans. Next week we'll have a big event for service members that are looking for SkillBridge, and we have replays available across the board. If you are a service member that is joining us today, before we get started, I want to say thank you so much for being here. This is predominantly to help employers navigate the SkillBridge program, but I always love when service members are taking advantage of any opportunities for direct industry exposure. So if you are here as a service member interested in SkillBridge, thank you for being here. Please also join us next week. And then we've also just announced a new partnership with several veteran employee resource groups via Veterati. So if you're not already using that, please check that out. For today, I would like to welcome some very special guests for being here with us today to share with employers and HR leaders and business leaders how they too can participate in SkillBridge. I am going to stop the screen share. And I would like to please, if we could introduce, and I guess I'm going to let you all introduce yourselves. You'll do a much better job than I would. If we could start, Boris, do you mind to kick us off?
Sure, no problem. Thank you, everyone. My name is Boris Kuhn. I'm with the Office of Secretary of Defense, so DoD, and I oversee DoD SkillBridge program. So welcome, everyone.
Thanks for being here, Boris.
No problem.
Liz, I feel like you should probably go next. You are by far the most astute in this space of any of us.
Thanks, Candy. I appreciate it, and I'm happy to be here today. I'm Elizabeth Belcaster. I've been working for over a decade, probably even longer than that, with Department of Defense, labor unions, city colleges, industry by industry, helping to stand up some early on, which was veterans programs, putting veterans to work at a time that was really necessary. That was when the economy had collapsed. And now going into this administration, I've been doing this since the Bush administration. That's a really long time ago. Young Bush, though, just so you know that. Bush, Obama, Trump, and now Biden. And happy to be here today to help others navigate this great program that DoD is offering. My role typically is to work with public-private partnerships to really navigate the teams together work with the Department of Defense, Department of Labor, and the military installations and branches. So Candy, as always, I am thrilled to be here and love this forum. So welcome everybody, and thank you, Candy.
Thank you.
Yep.
Next up, we have another industry expert. Chris, do you mind to say hello?
I tossed that expert phrase around very lightly there, but great to see everyone. My name is Chris Thorne. I am a 30-year Navy veteran and senior certified HR professional. After retirement, I became very involved in the DoD SkillBridge space across a various number of opportunities, but mostly my passion is working directly with industry and employers, helping to understand the SkillBridge opportunities, how to work with it, how to navigate it, use best practices so that you can really maximize this program. So it's a pleasure to be here with all of you today, and looking forward to the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. I shared before that 50 Strong is all about supporting employers. Employers are the jobs providers. And so we have, I'm so happy to have Johnson & Johnson, Cushman & Wakefield, and Amazon Web Services here today with us. They are all close partners of ours, and we've invited them because, you know, there's always the how do we do something, but then there is the what's the reality and what are the best practices and what is everybody else learning. And that's really what we think is really important to share. Tiffany, do you mind to say hello?
Sure. I'm excited to be here. Tiffany Daugherty. I'm an Army vet myself, a former Army Special Ops spouse, and a Navy brat, so a little bit of a half breed on the personal side. On the professional side, I have only been with Johnson & Johnson for about a month, scaling up our SkillBridge program, which has been up for about a year now. But I've been in the industry in financial services and in corporate recruiting of the military community for some time. And what I love about this space, before I hand it off, is how collaborative we are. That this has always been a community where we open our cupboards and our drawers and tell each other everything about how to get this work done. So I hope we get some good questions from you.
Tiffany, thank you so much. Ari, how are you?
I'm great. How are you all? It's good to be here. So I program manage Amazon Web Services SkillBridge and Fellowship Program. Previous to that, I was with the Walt Disney Company, starting up their business as well in this space. I am a 7+ year Navy career reservist. I'm a command career counselor and do ESO, and I also facilitate TAP. So very familiar with this space at large. Not to override you, Tiffany, we love all. I'm even talking now to some Space Force folks too. So you've got those included in our now surveys and everything. So, which is great to see as those individual service members transitioned over. I'm very passionate about this space, very excited to be here. And I think Tiffany made a great point, is that we're all about sharing everything, right? Whether we are prior service, spouses or not, in the end, we're all here for the right reason. And that's what you find in this community with the right companies that succeed well. Is because we're all here. What's best is putting that service member and their family first.
It's 100% right, Ari. I mean, I've certainly seen that collaboration. I think it's very cool to see all these companies, some of which frankly are competitors at times, because everybody knows what transition from the military looks like. And so therefore everybody just wants everybody else to find the right fit, right? Wherever that is. Sorry, we live near Luke and the jets are flying overhead. I'm gonna go on mute. Matt, do you mind to hop on?
Sure thing. Thanks so much. Hey, everybody, Matt Disher. I lead the military talent programs here at Cushman & Wakefield. So we're a global commercial real estate company. Interestingly, we probably do business with the other companies that are here on this call. So we are clients. I know Amazon is one of our large clients. So we, in the spirit of collaboration, we're all doing this work to really benefit each other and benefit the greater community. I served 4 years in the Marine Corps as a combat engineer many years ago. I typically, when we're talking to the SkillBridge candidates, I go into a whole story about how blowing things up and shooting guns doesn't land me the best job in the world after the Marine Corps. But along those lines, I have been doing this type of work, leading military programs, building military programs in companies for roughly 11 or 12 years of my career now, in a handful of other large companies, or advising on military programs in other large companies. I'll say this, I can't really say much more to add to what everybody else said. other than this. In doing these programs for probably not as long as Elizabeth Belcaster, but maybe almost as long as she has been doing. I know Tiffany's been in the space for a while as well. SkillBridge is by and large the most revolutionary program that has come along. And I recently wrote an article on LinkedIn, kind of pouring out some of my feelings about this. There have been programs and nonprofits and organizations and shiny new toys that have come along in this space for years and years and years. And this has been happening since the kickoff of the Afghanistan conflict in 2001. And I would say 95% of those organizations and nonprofits and shiny new toys have gone away because they didn't offer something revolutionary. SkillBridge is that revolutionary tool. In our industry, particularly, we're typically hiring people that have industry experience. Makes it really hard to hire somebody who's hanging up the uniform and come into our industry, which is where SkillBridge comes in. So we have fully jumped into this. We have a small team in the organization, aside from myself. Jamie McCall, who is on the call, she's not on the panel with us, but Jamie McCall specializes in the SkillBridge program. She's leading the SkillBridge program at Cushman & Wakefield currently. So happy to share best practices, happy to share what we've learned and lessons learned, what works, what doesn't. And if anybody has any questions for me off the side of this call, please feel free to reach out to me.
Awesome. And I'm just looking at the folks that are joining us. We have actually a few folks that are here that represent other SkillBridge programs. Thank you all so much for just hopping on to listen in. I'm going to pull my screen back up just for a second. Quick housekeeping item. Please use the chat box to connect, share ideas. If you have questions that you just want to come to the panelists, please use the Q&A box for that. To all of our panelists, please keep an eye on that and feel free to hop on and answer any of those that come in that you might want to jump on. Okay. So I have a slide here about SkillBridge since Boris Kuhn is with us. Boris, it seems very fitting. Do you mind to just give us some background about the DoD SkillBridge program?
Sure, not a problem. Well, I'm not going to repeat what you have written down there since it's already there. So I'll do some high level, I guess, since we've seen a lot of traffic in the last week or two about what could be coming or is happening come October. So I guess we'll do some myth busting. That's a point to make. But also a huge thank you to Matt that the article you posted or blog that was very meaningful. Some of you might not know this, but it was actually a Marine that drove the SkillBridge Authority home. So for those of you who are not aware of that, so just FYI. So even though the Army is the biggest user of SkillBridge, it was actually a Marine that brought us or gave us SkillBridge. So yes, SkillBridge has in the last 2-3 years has grown tremendously from an awareness standpoint, and a huge thank you to the industry partners for obviously driving that change and awareness. And because of that, obviously more service members are participating and they're doing the grassroots, talking back. I actually saw a survey yesterday, and I've seen more and more surveys where 30% of the people who are on LinkedIn doing the survey are saying roughly they wish they knew about SkillBridge when they were separating. And that's pretty amazing. So that's telling a story. If we look at the 200,000 individuals who are transitioning, 30% is a large number, right? If they were aware or knew even about SkillBridge. So we're not even at the cusp of even knowing how many of them, if they knew, right, how many more submissions for SkillBridge could have been. So if you're looking for that talent or need talent and qualified talent, so we're just starting off, if you will, correct? So that's meaningful to us from the standpoint that we know there's more service members who want to pursue careers and educate. They might have joined the military for an education. We talk about this all the time, but education is a long-term goal. Everybody needs a career or a job when they leave post-service, and that's important to us because that's why they joined the military, right? They needed a job, they needed an income, and that's why they go and pursue education a lot of times, because of the wonderful GI Bill that provides that. But by itself, it's not enough, and they need that cross-income stream as well too. And they want to sustain themselves and their families. And I apologize up front. I did not say that I'm a veteran myself of almost 13 years, and I'm also a military spouse, and vice versa, I guess now. And my wife just came back from Afghanistan as well. So thank you for all of you who have served and are still serving from that standpoint. I don't have the exact numbers of individuals who, how many to date we have, but I know that in the first 6 months of this year, we had individuals who applied for SkillBridge was the same number as last year's authorized, which is 14,000. So I'm going to assume that forecasting wise, as I said, that we are going to see the same number or higher this year for SkillBridge. And I'm going to tell the Army that the Air Force is going to either be on par or beat the Army this year. And that's speaking to the organizations like AWS, who's talking about the one-offs. So for those organizations here on this call or want to learn more about SkillBridge, that's really the difference, the delta that's been what has, I would say, helped grow SkillBridge is the reality is service members don't leave the service in cohort, and they leave at different times of the year. So that's really the difference, right? They leave every week, every month. There's 18 to 20,000 service members that leave every month from service. They don't leave every 3 months. There's not like there's a glut of service members that leave at periods or intervals. They leave daily, weekly, monthly. So that's something to keep in mind. And that's it's a cyclical event that probably is on par with most of your openings. And the other part I will probably not exclude, and it's very important. And those of you who are not aware, reservists and guardsmen also need employment. And that might be near your localities as well. And they're gonna, hopefully, if the legislation passes in the FY22 NDA, they'll also have ability to participate in SkillBridge as well. So I don't want to, we want to be more inclusive at total force, and I can thank a few people, and Liz Balcaster probably knows a few of those individuals. So again, that's talking about how the collective awareness is important from that standpoint. Another big one is Air Force. A lot of people are talking about what is going on with their change for Air Force. I think Air Force, talking about our guardians, was mentioned. They're actually looking to make sure they can support their airmen and guardians. They're actually moving away from having individual ability to support the service members, and they're doing what the Navy is doing. Basically, they're going to do the individual counseling and approval. And if it's not on SkillBridge, they're not authorizing because it's become too much for them to try to do everything. So it's, again, everybody's moving to the enterprise approach, right? Kind of like everybody else. So if you're not on the SkillBridge website, if you haven't been vetted by the DoD, you're not an approved partner. So that whole instance of if you didn't go to contact us and didn't come to our office for clearance by our policy, the Department of Defense does not know you. The services won't approve your opportunity with the service member. So if you're talking to the service member or the command, that's great, but individual policies. So now we're talking about, just like Ari talked about, you now have basically all the services minus the Army who's still approving locally. That's a big change. So that's a big shift, i.e. October 1st. I just want to put that out there.
So Boris, let's unpack some of what you just said for those that may be brand new to the SkillBridge arena. Boris talked about, being on the DoD SkillBridge website. What that means is the DoD, Boris's office, has basically gone through the credentialing process and has authorized a certain program. I wanted to just back up really quickly and give some context. So I've been tracking the DoD SkillBridge website and keeping an eye on the number of programs that are out there. In 2019, there were 123 programs. As of today, there are 1,142 programs listed on the DoD SkillBridge website. So if you think about, kind of in a period of 18 months during COVID, dramatic growth. And I think what you'll hear from all the partners here today is that, yes, there is dramatic growth. This is driving a lot of the service member engagement. Frankly, it's driving a lot of employer engagement too, which is probably why many of you are here. But Mike Piper at Lowe's said it best. we're learning every day. It's a new program for us. It's a new program for the service members. And so I think what you'll see here is all these employers are really working together to say, this is what I just experienced. Have you gone through this, and what do I do? Boris also talked a little bit about kind of the different ways to participate. So I come from corporate, I think in PowerPoint. So to me, if I can't simplify it to go on a PowerPoint slide, then there's a problem. What I'll share with you is it took me almost 3 years to get to the point where I could put it on this PowerPoint. And part of that was because I wasn't working directly with and listening directly to Boris's office. And so there's kind of two main ways that employers can participate in SkillBridge. The first is direct authorization by the DoD, that is Boris's office, via official MOU. In this case, it is an employer's or a provider's program. It's their program. They structure it how they want. They're kind of responsible for sourcing candidates, all the interviewing, the command approval paperwork, which we can talk about, as well as the participation. So that's kind of the first way. The second way is collaboration with another third-party DoD authorized SkillBridge provider. There are certainly situations where this makes sense. We'll talk about this, but I wanted to just kind of lay out, probably oversimplified, and there is some nuance, as you can see on the slide, but there's kind of two main ways. And so just kind of think about that as we're having this discussion. To give you an idea, I'm showing you a few programs that have gone through the DoD authorization process. They all have an official MOU with Boris's office. So you can see many large employers listed there. The other side of it is there are many third-party DoD SkillBridge providers. I've not listed all of them here, but they may offer another pathway for an employer to get started, if you will, in SkillBridge participation. Fun fact, I run a small SkillBridge program. The ones that you see pictured here, I have referred employers to in the last 2 weeks to every single one of them for different reasons. And so I encourage you to do your research. But again, just know that there's kind of these two pathways.
And Candy, if you don't mind, actually, just real quick, because Babs had put in the Q&A, and by the way, great to see you, Babs, there. She had asked how many of those 1143 that you mentioned are broad industry programs versus individual companies. And I think that's important to, when we talk about those third-party providers, a good number of those are industry representative groups, exactly like what Babs is doing out there. So not necessarily for-profit third-party commercial vendors, but industry representative groups as well. And so that's a great thing to note.
That's right. Thank you for that, Chris. And Babs, if I did not have your logo on there, I will, oh, there it is. It's the old one though. We'll get the updated one on there. All right, so
I'm so sorry to just mention that this is not an or situation. I would venture, I know our company, probably AWS and probably Cushman and Wakefield, we do both, right?
Yes.
We have a program and participate with third party.
That's a great call out, Tiffany. And let's definitely talk about some of that, because you all have experience with that. For those of you that are on this call, if you have not already navigated over to the DoD SkillBridge website, please definitely do that. Boris's team has done a really good job of putting lots and lots of information there for employers. DOL guidance, a whole lot of FAQs. So the URL is on their screen. I encourage you to read everything that I've highlighted under A before you actually go to the how to participate section. But once you go to how to participate, there's a relatively simple form that you'll plug a few items into. That initiates all the next steps. And once that initiates, Boris's team is kind of tracking, it goes into a queue, and they're doing a really great job of tracking all the next steps from start to finish for everybody that starts the application process. All right, so I'm going to stop the screen share now. That's all I have for slides. The goal of this is not to kill you in PowerPoint. The goal of this is simply to set the stage a little bit. And then we have these experts here, basically. They are all kind of navigating in different ways. There are some things that are on their minds that they'll probably talk about. And again, we'll all keep an eye on the Q&A box if there are questions that we need to kind of dive into a little bit. So I'd like to start the discussion, if I may, with this idea of there are workforce opportunities in all shapes and sizes. There are employers of all shapes and sizes. And there are transitioning service members in all shapes and sizes, skill, talent, location of interest, that kind of thing. Can we talk a little bit about just some of the roles, Matt, Ari, and Tiffany, that you guys have open, you all working on it, Tiffany, that you all have open, just as a starting point. I think it's really important. Chris actually wrote something this week about the importance of opportunities for enlisted service members, which I think is really important for us to keep in mind. So can we just kind of start the discussion there and let's see how it evolves? And Liz, also, if you want to jump in with some of the programs that you've been working on, I think that'd be really great as well.
Yeah, I'll just say at the forefront of this, Candy, when the SkillBridge policy was originally written, it really was designed for the enlisted members, those that were going to go home, and salaries would look different for an enlisted member than it would for an officer. Although it's inclusive to everybody, including the spouses, it was really designed for the enlisted member. And I think that the array of military occupational skills and the skill sets that they have in the military really represent some of those blue collar jobs. And at some level, they'll accelerate and get into those management positions, but it really was initially designed to be that. So I'm glad that you bring that up. And I know, Chris, you had talked about that a little bit yesterday with Candy. I think there's, I think that's really where it started. We were getting into that space where unemployment numbers being paid out by the DoD were at enormous numbers, and we really needed to find people to fill those industry gaps for aging workforce and others. So that's really where it started, but it's a really good point, and I would love to have Chris expand a little bit more on that, Chris.
I appreciate it. And
Yeah.
The interesting point here is that over the evolution of SkillBridge utilization, a couple of programs have successfully been able to engage mid and senior level career into pipelines for companies and industry that have been very, very beneficial. And that's a wonderful thing. We want successful transitions, whether somebody served 4 years or 40, no matter what their rank or grade or service was. We want that successful transition. But unfortunately, due to the strength of some of those programs, there became this perception both inside the Department of Defense as well as within industry that the program was focused on those mid to senior level career, which, while again, we celebrate those successes and we love seeing them, it's really important that we sort of bend the curve back the other way so that everyone understands that just like Elizabeth just shared, the real intent was to address unemployment, underemployment, that first job. I mean, again, when we look at the fact that we've got pretty reasonable statistics saying transitioning service members, especially in junior to mid grades, are going to leave that first post-military job within 12 months. And so those barriers, SkillBridge was really brought to address those in the junior to mids. And so I'm excited to be able to bring that back into that conversation. So I think there's lots to talk about there today. I do want to hear, though, Ari and Tiffany and Matt and the roles they've got, and then sort of as we roll from that, but I love it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I'm happy to hop in, and I'm passionate about this topic. By the way, I came from a Navy enlisted family, and I went through a medical discharge as an E4 in the Army much earlier than I expected to leave my career, and what I thought would be a much longer military career. And I'll also say I was 17 when I joined, and I became an air traffic controller, the highest paid job in the US that didn't require a degree at the time, was FAA certified, and I served during 9/11. And right after they increased the retirement age for air traffic controllers. My point is, that was not a viable option for me when I left to stay straight in that field. And certainly had to regroup and figure that out. So it's something that I'm very passionate about. And I will also say personal passion, and then I'll talk about Johnson & Johnson, but I think it explains why I'm here, is I think one of the really great things about programs like this is I'm all about breaking the privilege model. I don't know how else to put it, but elite industries have track records of hiring. I don't think it's on purpose or by intention. It's kind of that unconscious bias, but the the track record for these industries and how to get into them is that you have to have come from a family that knew how to show you the way and be on the timeline. And those of us who come through the military are often people who are first generation college students who are making a new way for ourselves. And so finding pathways into, spent several years in the financial services sector and now in pharmaceutical and consumer goods. That's what we're really excited about. So Johnson & Johnson, we are right now doing a deep dive and looking at all of the places that we can put SkillBridge opportunities and getting creative about that. You can always go to our careers site and just use the word SkillBridge to search to see what we have posted. We have 2 active openings right now, but I'm in talks to get a lot more up. And we specifically have a couple of parameters when we're looking is we look for where do we see ongoing future hiring needs. And really for those of you in HR roles, this is not a program that's ideal for that manager who says, I need to fill a job tomorrow. This is not a perfect fit for that.
Right.
It truly isn't a full-time job tomorrow for a number of reasons. This is for people who say, we tend to always have a need, or 6 months to a year from now, we're budgeting a full-time role. And we have some lead up to that role or an ongoing need. We find it to be ideal for roles that have a train up period. So I'm really excited and keep looking for some of the roles that we'll have in medical device engineering, where someone who just has a bit of technical aptitude would typically have 4 months of on-the-job training and would typically have to come from the industry. This is an ideal program to sort of ramp them up into that. Those sorts of fields that can be a little bit more difficult to break into. Where I was looking at, one, is there going to be support from that team? Again, so they're hard pressed, they need help today, they need help immediately. While we want people to be doing meaningful work and contributing, we don't want it to be that. We want it to be that they're going to be supported, they're going to have an on-ramp and a train-up period, and we know there's going to be a job at the end of it. So that's sort of what we look at, and we're really evaluating that now. I'll throw it to Matt or Ari.
Ari, you go ahead.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. So I think Tiffany bring up great points, right? And this is someone right now who's going for their master's. By the way, if you ever served, I highly recommend the MBV program at USC. I'm in it right now. It's a unique program. But I agree. As a recruiter, I get passionate about it. I hate education barriers. I hate it, right? Because not everyone has access to it in different things. And so at AWS, we're looking at ways to go beyond that, right? So through our AWS Educate, we offer all the training for free and then give service members half off, right? So we're looking at ways at cutting through this pay gap in other areas to get educated and certified. Our approach is any job can be a SkillBridge job. So we have 2 ways in getting the talent, right? It's you can A, apply to a position and say you're in SkillBridge and eligible, or B, you come to me and, hey, Ari, I want to do this at Amazon Web Services. I go vet for you and talk to that hiring manager and say, hey, look, I have Tiffany. She's qualified in this background. I see you have a need. Let's have a conversation, right? So as business leaders, you have to have a 2-way approach here because it's not just one size fits all. And I think you made a great point, Tiffany, too, is when I talk to hiring managers and other recruiters, if you have a need now, don't use this program. This is for that future planning, right? I know a lot of organizations now are planning for 2022. This is a great time to have that conversation piece to say, what is your forecasting for 2022? Let's talk about setting aside a few of those recs or job openings for the SkillBridge program. It's my favorite time of year to talk about because it's a great way to segue in and plan and give you enough time to ramp up. Also, something I encourage is some type of internal or external mentorship type program. So we're fortunate at Amazon, we have quite a few rounds of former SkillBridge participants. We pair up each one individually with someone who was once a SkillBridge participant and succeeded at Amazon outside of their organization. And this is key to build a sense of community and network there, right? In the military, you're used to your job codes, MOSs, that's all you know. We know on the civilian side, you have to meet many people and many people fast. So we want to be able to showcase those skills. And also, to Tiffany's point, we use this as a pipeline for hiring, right? So it's also backing in that 2-way approach. You can use it just to branch out the skills to create a diverse, creative way for your team, or do you want to go the long-term route of creating a talent pipeline? And that's the Amazon approach. So when you come in with us for a SkillBridge, that hiring manager has set aside a job for you. But also, if that's not the right job, we have contingencies in place to pivot and be able to find other opening for you. Because we know this is your first time. To this point, you joined at 17, right? Many service members join at a young age, right? We know this may not be the perfect fit for you today, and we don't want to pigeonhole you. So we create this wide vast, right? That is the beauty of Amazon. We're a large company, but I know there's some comments earlier about smaller companies. Just be very open to all opportunities, not just only finance, only HR, only here, right? I'm a machinist mate by trade. Not all mechanical engineers want to be doing that today, right? Leverage their skill set. And I also always caution away from the word internship, because you're getting someone with 4+ years, if not 20+ years of experience, and most likely some type of education, maybe not the traditional education that we're used to of a 2-year or 4-year degree, but a military education. So it's a very hybrid approach to what a typical civilian hire is postgraduate or an internship. I'll pause there. I definitely want to give Matt some time here as well.
Thanks, Ari. And Tiffany, I think both of you guys hit on some amazing things. Tiffany, I'll address this first. The Great Equalizer is what I call the military. I am the first man in my family, male in my family, to get a college degree in 3 generations. And largely that is because I went into the Marine Corps and had those benefits available to me. And then I chose a different path than some of the other guys in my family. And along those lines, if you look around the U.S. Armed Forces, the vast majority of people, to a point that Ari made, the vast majority of people are not generals and colonels. They are not these high up leadership, executive leadership types. They are mechanics and veterinarians and corpsmen and docs and machinist mates and logistics managers and these jobs that we have as companies. That's what we do. Similar to what Ari said, at Cushman & Wakefield and C&W Services, that's our sister company, we have decided that any job, any position inside of the company can be a SkillBridge opportunity. And as such, we look at it that way. So when a candidate comes and knocks on our door, we send them through a quick survey process, and it's an application essentially, but it gets their time and their interest and availability and how long they've been in and what rank they are and what pay scale they want after the military, et cetera. Because back to what Tiffany said, and Ari said, we're looking at full-time roles after their SkillBridge opportunity. We don't want them to come in and just get some opportunity working in a global commercial real estate company and then, hey, hit the road, we don't have anything for you. We're trying to keep you. And this is I'm going to answer part of a question that somebody else asked in the chat. What if you're a small business and you only want one person? We're a huge company, and we're only taking people in that fit into the roles that we have coming open in the next 4 to 5 months is like usually the window we look for. So we're not filling these roles right now at this very moment. We're projecting a couple of months out. I have a candidate that's saying, hey, I'm leaving the Navy in 4 months. I have a machinist mate background. I'd love to be working on mechanical systems. Well, hey, guess what? We manage buildings like the World Trade Center in New York City. We need mechanics. We need facility maintainers. We need people on our Amazon account that do work inside of all the moving parts in an Amazon distribution center. We have to have those people to run our business. So this is for large businesses or small. Take 1 or take 100 or take 1,000, whatever it might be. At Cushman & Wakefield, as I mentioned, we have decided to make virtually any position that comes open into a SkillBridge opportunity. I have taken people into facility maintenance, property management, learning and development, a handful of managers and senior management level types of roles. Again, it's lonely at the top. The higher you go in rank structure, this is something that we identified as a company was when you are going for the vice president, senior vice president job here at Cushman & Wakefield, it requires you to have 20+ years of commercial real estate experience. You're not going to have that coming out of the military. So what we're trying to do is take you who has 20 years in the military, potentially plug you into a management position, which essentially fast tracks you to get you that experience level in your SkillBridge opportunity, get you that experience level so that in the next 5 years, 6 years, 10 years, you can be that director, senior director, vice president, senior vice president. So it's all kind of career pathing. We jumped into this a little over a year ago, and I have shared this with a lot of the other employers that I've talked to and sort of mentored on this. We didn't come into it with the plan first. We just got into it. Then we developed the plan as we were going. And I know a lot of people are pulling their hair out going like, well, why didn't you develop the plan? And think this over for a year in your company, because it simply wouldn't work for us. We just needed to jump in, and the way that we do the operation is jump in, see what works, adjust as we go. And it's probably typical Marine Corps fashion. Just, develop the plan as soon as the first shots are fired. The plan goes out the window and we just keep moving toward the mission. So I'll stop talking there. And I just wanted to throw a little bit of flavor on some of the questions that were in the Q&A, that this program can be whatever you want it to be, as long as you are offering that candidate an opportunity to learn a business industry with the hopes of keeping them.
Yeah, Matt, this is Liz. I just want to piggyback on that comment that you made about, you didn't go in there with a plan. I think it's such a new program that a lot of people, that's why they're on this platform right now. This is why they're viewing it. Walk us through what that looked like from day one. I think even independently, I was there when it was really the career skill programs by the Army. It was the Teamsters and veterans and piping at some level that did some training for service members that needed training for CDL truck drivers and other things. And that's kind of how it evolved. It was never really a plan. It became a plan, and it's now a plan for a lot of people that are questioning it and scratching their head and saying, how can I do this? So I think it's important for your audience, Candy, to know that it's a new program. It's and I say this all the time on every one of your platforms. It's a small child in the eyes of a government program. And quite frankly, Boris and his team, every single day, they are learning and studying and using companies as case studies. They're learning more every day. So new tools will come into place. But for a small program like this, your best tool is to really talk to others and get the feedback of the mentors, like Matt's and Chris and Candy and so many that have already gone through it. I think there's a process for everybody, including those small companies, quite frankly. I know the University of Chicago, Candy, is now taking some of their team that's doing the military learning space and trails program, and they're going to put them out in the community to work as interns for some of these smaller companies that have an interest in this. So there's platforms that are being designed day to day, but there's always a way to do it. And I don't think it's too time consuming. I think once you get the formula down for your own company, it will get easier and easier with time. So I hope that's helpful.
Chris, I'm guessing you may have some ideas for small businesses. So I think this is a great, sorry, Ari, I see.
Yeah, Ari was in
Ari
there.
had his hand up. I'm sorry, Ari, I jumped before you there.
Oh, no, I love it.
in.
I love organic things. I'm all
Yeah.
for interruptions, food and eating and drinking on Zoom calls. I said that
There
before
you go.
last time's Candy. Especially for anyone here, business, hopefully you guys encourage that too in this virtual environment. But Matt and Tiffany reminded me as well, we actually launching this past the end of this year and going into next year, a ramp up. So we're using these 12 weeks as their onboarding. So typically at Amazon, it's a 90-day onboarding period. We're using the SkillBridge for that to succeed with the business. And so, for example, we're doing an A2C, so it's apprenticeship type programs or getting associate to cloud practitioner roles. And we're taking that time and they're shadowing and getting ready. So if they're offered that full-time position afterwards, they can go right away to customer facing. So this is a great way for ramp up as well. When you talk about training and pipelines, right, to Matt's point earlier, maybe they're interested, especially a lot of service members are pivoting their career. Right? They've worked in a 3-letter agency for 4 years or 20 plus. Now they want to come to a commercial side or private sector or somewhere else. They may not have that full experience. You can also leverage this as a pipeline to train and skill and ramp them up. So the business case is you're getting a, try before you buy method on who's going to succeed here and set them up for success. So when they get there, they're ready to go and you're not wasting that time in the business. But I also caution, right? I know there's some Q&A as well, real quick, on how do you focus, how do you find the talent in different areas too? Get involved with TAP, get involved with the military bases, get involved with Candy at 50 Strong. She meets out with those individuals and the other SkillBridge providers is the best way. LinkedIn is huge right now. Finally, service members are leveraging that more than ever before. Is something else there to look at. And the beauty of these programs is, to earlier, you can have 5 in the beginning of Q1, 20 in Q3, and none in Q4, and that's okay. There's no commitment. I have to do 100 a year, 5,000 a year, whatever it is. It's really up to your business needs.
Yeah, and If I can, that's the thing that I love, and it sort of goes back, whether you're looking at 1 or 1,000 in a year for utilizations of this. The idea of SkillBridge is to be able to create an individual opportunity for an individual service member, and that can be anywhere in the nation, any industry, any size company. Now, let's be very clear. If you're a small mom and pop and you're looking at using SkillBridge for just a single person to bring on board with no intent to have a follow-on after that, there is a process to go through to get your approval, and Boris can certainly speak to that. The DoD wants to ensure that partner companies who are approved really are fulfilling what the intent of the organization is. And so that's where, sometimes maybe reaching out to some of the approved industry organizations or third-party providers that Candy was talking about, if you're thinking of using it one time, it might be a way to go for those, even to give it a try in the sandbox. And then maybe if you decide to use it for growth later on, then to come back. But there's no company who should say this is not for me. I do want to say though, I've got a whole list of things I'd love to talk, because we've got such great partners making such great points, but I want to hit on something that Ari said there, and I couldn't help but smile at this. Inside industry, all of us know when we say interns, the first thing we all think is year 2, year 3 college interns coming out, the 19-year-old who is halfway into their undergraduate degree program, who's going to be really good usually at making coffee, running errands, and doing lots of social activities for 6 weeks during the summertime. That is the mental image most organizations have when we think interns. And when we talk about DoD SkillBridge, whether it's apprenticeships, internships, fellowships, the key point I always want to focus in, these are skilled background individuals with an amazing deck plate set of soft skills to bring into the organization, and a great set of trained hard skills that need some adaptation to be career ready inside your organization. But that's where the name SkillBridge comes from, is taking that opportunity to bring them into the organization, train them to the hard skills that they are adaptable for. So I'm with Ari. Don't get hung up on internship. As a matter of fact, I tend to tell companies, don't even use the term, because it just ends up confusing. But just understanding these opportunities are intended to take people who are experienced, have soft skills, have a deck of hard skills that just need training adaptation for your industry.
Just a caveat as a Boris. Number one, we don't say fellowships and internships. We say SkillBridge opportunities for a reason. And to caveat Chris, Aries, Elizabeth, and Matt, and Tiffany's point, right? Because the SkillBridge program is designed to be whatever you all make it. And sometimes it's hard, because after you go through the SkillBridge process, companies come back to our office or even the search and say, well, what's next? Well, what's next is whatever you want it to be and however it looks like. And that's where the shakeup occurs sometimes. Sometimes organizations and those of you who are on here. So I love the discussion that's happening, because it's an identity crisis, and it's not on our end, but it is at times, but it's identity crisis on your end. Really, it's what you want the firm to be, just like you mentioned here. If it's one person or 800, I think the first year for Amazon was, they're like, well, we get 100 people on. They ended up getting 864 people the first year for Amazon, right? And Tiffany, to your point, Johnson & Johnson, like, we're going to take baby steps, and that's okay. It's really, again, whatever you want it to be, and it can be, and you can have your hands in multiple cookie jars, if you will. And we don't frown upon it, because again, your organizational needs and requirements, and however you're comfortable in your team dynamics, like Matt mentioned, that is all on your organization and however your leadership supports it. And the Department of Defense already drives enough requirements and has enough problems. We don't need additional ones. So it's a joke there. Go ahead.
If I could just piggyback too on what you're saying there, and just say, your companies, I know there's a lot of comparison to early careers, and we're talking especially at large companies. I think SkillBridge is a great opportunity to find the appropriate level. There was a lot of time in this call spent talking about not just looking for senior folks. And I think that's an important note, but I also think it's important to talk about bringing people in at the right level for their skill set and not underemploying. And I think SkillBridge can be a great way for, during that try-on period, for people to compete for roles at levels that they wouldn't if they were applying straight off the street, they wouldn't be hired in at, because they've proven themselves and they can get in at a better level. So I think I look at that both ways. And I would also say, especially large companies, I compare military recruiting much more often to a returners program than to an early careers program. So thinking about that, many of your organizations are probably looking at returners program. People have left industry for a period of time, but have a technical specialty they want to come back to. And they're benching for higher level roles. And so I think that helps with the business case.
So Tiffany, I actually love that comment you made, the returners program from an industry standpoint. So from my HR side, so Chris, I'm a SHRM. I got SHRM CP, so there we go. If I can go there, I'm kidding. But I am SHRM, not from the kidding from that standpoint. But that's truly important, right? So military service members might not have a traditional degree like Matt mentioned, but we all have some kind of education. And a friend of mine actually says it best. Everybody's, we all train to educate. So everybody starts their education journey being trained in some capacity. Education is typically in the classroom. Well, you are air traffic controller. You did some kind of training in the classroom, right? At some classroom, some school, somewhere, right? You had to take a test to become an FAA air traffic controller, even back then. So, well, maybe at that time Army was not FAA certified, so it is now, Tiffany. But
through the hard work of the credentialing office.
That's right, Chris.
We work.
That's my side hustle. If anybody wants to know more, but in any case, that is absolutely true, right? So we want to make sure everybody has that capability, and that's why we want to drive our service members who are going into the space, especially like SkillBridge, that they go into the right programs, right? So if somebody is senior and retiring, let's say E7 and above or 05 and above, they're going into the right opportunity. They're talking to, let's say, Tiffany Johnson versus going through a third party who's trying to fill a persona, right, per se, and say, oh, we have an overqualified individual who's getting underserved and underpaid. And that's actually an issue right now we're discussing actually this morning with the Veterans Affairs and Department of Labor, because everybody's like, oh, wow, we don't, veterans are, unemployment is down. Well, the issue, when we start dissecting that number, they're working at McDonald's and they're working at, because they need jobs, right? So at the end of the day, they need an income, and they're willing to sacrifice and all that. That's the discussions we're having. So all of you here who are looking for talent, you might not be finding it because they're actually looking for employment, and we're here just talking about how to participate in SkillBridge, because now they've exited or they're leaving and they're just taking wage jobs somewhere else.
Absolutely. The dark secret to that, Boris, and I mean, we won't go too far down that. I celebrate the sub 3% unemployment for veterans as much as anyone else on this month's report, but our participation rate for veterans is still through the floor. And for our modern era veterans, for our working age coming out between ages of 24 and 45, we've got hundreds of thousands to bring back into the participation pool out there. So lots to be done.
This is something on this topic real quick, because we're always talking about education and education levels, and this is probably, I won't spend a lot of time on it because it's not relevant per se to what we're discussing, but this idea that companies are asking for degrees and certain credentials that might be just general, like come in with a degree, you are alienating a ton of people who have served 4, 6, 8 years in the military, didn't get a degree, and now they're going, well, I can't apply to this, so I have to go work at McDonald's, or I have to go work at whatever street down the road. And what we have to realize is, and if I took my own experience in the Marine Corps as a combat engineer, I spent more time in a classroom or learning setting in those 4 years than I did in college. And I took more away from being a leader, being a planner, sitting at a planning table with the colonels and the majors and stuff like that, and planning operations. I took more away from those experiences in my 4 years in the Marine Corps than I did in 4 years of college. Don't anybody please go to my college and tell them I said that, because they'd be really hurt by that. But in all reality, I was a 29-year-old, 30-year-old college student. You know what I mean? Like I already had all this. So anyway, if you are putting degree requirements on your jobs, unless you got to be a doctor or something like that, obviously, you got to have a specific requirement there. Looking for operations managers and you're saying you got to have a bachelor's degree or a master's degree, you're discounting yourself from 90% of great talent in the military.
And you know, Matt, I mean, across industry, everyone is doing a reset on their job descriptions right now. We all know during 2009, 2010, during the recession, we had job description inflation and everyone needed a master's degree to be a fry cook at McDonald's all of a sudden out there. And they did it. Why? Because people would do it. It's time that reset right now. And you know, Ari over at AWS, Amazon's doing a great job with this, and some of the other companies that are really doing if I don't need a scientific professional degree for a specific licensure qualification that's out there, then maybe I need to take a look. Do I need a 4-year degree? Do I need a graduate degree, or can I accept years of experience in lieu of? And that's, you know, Ari, I'd actually love to hear, because I know Amazon's really pushing that.
Sorry,
too.
can I actually jump in just for a quick second? One of my partners, a Fortune 500 company, for the first time ever, because of SkillBridge, was able to get their degree requirement relaxed at the corporate level because of SkillBridge.
Nice.
And so I just, you know, just for discussion's sake, SkillBridge is this really unique opportunity. But oh, by the way, in order to get advocacy and championship and alignment at that level, it took somebody that understood the workings of the organization. And so I want to make sure that we have time to talk about like how you're resourcing your programs, how you're tracking and thinking about, let's be honest, the financial impact of any business program. I think this is a really important part that frankly, we don't talk about that enough, but it is important when we're thinking about selling into the business. So sorry, Ari, I didn't mean to interrupt you if you wanted to jump back on, but I do want to make sure that we're talking.
Yeah. No, I think market points. I was listening. Sorry, our power went out all of a sudden here. So I got on audio to listen. And I think you all bring up great points. And so at Amazon, we're gone more to our certification specific to us and making it more accessible. And because I recognize that, and what you'll find, I think, at large, is service members don't lack the soft skills because they work for the most diverse employer of all time. As a DEI practitioner, all of our companies want to be the most diverse. That's the military. We'll never touch them. But they're missing the hard skills, right? But you as a business owner can show them that path to those hard skills and create pipelines, create avenues. So at AWS, I'm actually working on, hopefully launching in January, a dropdown to showcase you want to be a cloud practitioner. Here's exactly what you need. Taking away this hidden kind of vision of gatekeeping of what is required or what do you need to do to actually complete this job. So as a recruiter, I want that done, but also as gatekeepers here to get rid of that so we can support correctly and everything else that we need to do at large. The other piece too I heard real quick is, so at Amazon, we have levels, right? We actually are hiring more now at the L5 and L6 level with the SkillBridge. Which is great, right? We're no longer just going entry level ops focus. There is that. Our big push, we call it meaningful and gainful employment, not just to say you have a job, but also I want employers to recognize, right? We are in this great resignation time. The average time at any employer is 2.8 years, regardless if they're a service member or not. And I think that's also something else as SkillBridge provider is coaching these service members on that. Right, having those things in place. And right before I drop here off here, give someone else, something else we saw at Disney was interesting real quick was a Green Beret came in, right? Really smart guy. But when he got full-time employment, he's like, what is this, referring to his insurance ID card? And I think as a SkillBridge provider, you have to think beyond just hiring them, but really almost having a plan in place and educating these individuals on what a civilian life is and things that we take for granted. So we had to walk them through HMO, PPOs, all these other things too. It's not just getting a job, and it's looking holistically at their family and what's best for them.
All right, this is Boris. So, you know, this kind of goes to the name and title of this, I'll say this event, right? So being military ready. So a lot of employers might say they're military friendly, but the reality is, you know, that's a I'll say it's a cliche because everybody can say I'm military friendly. I have my dog is military friendly too, but I want my dog to be military ready. I'm kidding, but it really being military ready implies being aware of the needs of that individual, because a lot of times that individual joins, like Jennifer mentioned and like Ari mentioned, at 17. The reality is I could have joined the Army at 17 and a half. My parents didn't want to sign me out, so I joined at 20. But at the end of the day, a lot of individuals join at 17 and a half, 18. The first job or the first thing they ever done was be in the military. and they might have served 4 years or 6 years. But the other big thing is for those individuals who are here, they never applied for the job. They were recruited. They might have walked through the mall or a plaza or whatever it was, or high school, or walked into the recruiting station. But the reality is they didn't put together a resume or anything. They got asked a few questions, got a little bit of bling, and said, hey, give me your info, go take a PT test. And they went to MEPS, took a math, science, English test, and hey, you got a good enough score. Welcome, you want this, great. They didn't even choose their job sometimes. So like Ari said, he's an machinist mate, right? Boris was a logistician, then it was an HR. So I oversaw NC, so I know all that fun stuff. But the reality is we don't choose our rate or MOS. Choose your rate, choose your fate. So we can have that fun conversation. But the reality is we can make whatever we want of our careers in the military. How it's the outlook and how we look at that career. But the same effect goes into civilian life. So post-service careers is very different for military members simply because they don't know nothing else. So they do need that mentorship, as Ari and Matt and Chris and so many of you have talked about, those affinity groups that I know exist out there in different organizations. So if you have those or you don't have those, that it's very critical. And so like many of you mentioned, we coach individuals to be develop LinkedIn profiles. So a lot of people ask me, well, how do we find candidates? A lot of them create LinkedIn profiles. They're out there, so you can data mine if you need 1 or 50, as mentioned. So great points all along there from that standpoint as well. So thank you for that.
I think such good points. And I know I want to get back to something Candy said around the ROI. Like how do we look at this within our companies from an ROI standpoint? And again, I'm relatively new to Johnson & Johnson. I know how the program is pitched here, but I'll speak to my financial services sector background too. Looking at promotion data, looking at performance data in the organizations that I've been in, and looking at those metrics of what veterans were doing, military connected individuals were doing in our organizations, I was really able to make the business case, and I still think it very much stands across our industries, is we invest so much money in all of our large corporations, and I'm sure many of your small organizations as well, in these early careers programs. And again, under the moniker that these are going to be the leaders of tomorrow. And I think it was just mentioned in the modern workforce, people, when we're talking about leaders of tomorrow, when we actually dive in on that data, in many organizations, you're finding that those people are never rising to senior leadership roles. They're not staying at the companies long enough to do it. They're not getting promoted fast enough to do it when you're hiring them straight out of college. And the way that I position military talent, SkillBridge talent specifically, is that these are the leaders of actual tomorrow. They're going to get promoted very quickly. And in fact, I see, again, I go back to thinking of SkillBridge as this ramp that helps people to come in at the right level that might take them a year to get promoted to otherwise, that they're able to sort of prove and get over that learning curve. Because our military folks, I'll actually pause and say, when I was with Wounded Warrior Project and coaching veterans and military spouses all the time, especially veterans, I would talk to them and I would draw them what their career path would often look like when they get out of the military. Is that expected to be a steady line up, and having to explain to them they were going to start over, and that usually means coming back down from where they left the military, but then typically means a much faster spike up than someone who started in that industry. Their learning curve and their ability to get back where they were and to progress from there is much faster. And so to me, you can look at the monetary impact of that, of the fast ramp up to where these people are going to be leaders quickly in your organization. And when you compare that to what you're investing in other leadership development pathways, which by the way, we also have 2-year military leadership development and experienced military leadership development programs, which are great in their own right. But when you look at what you're investing in that early career talent to hope they're going to stay with you long enough to reap that benefit as leaders, this makes a lot of business sense to me.
Can I add something to this too? Because this is and Liz, I know you and I have had this conversation.
Yeah, I was just going to chime in myself, Matt. I'll wait until you're done. Thanks.
Well, I'm not taking notes. I'm just going to try to line items things real quick. Yep. But we talk about, in companies, we talk about turnover rates and the cost of turnover, the cost of recruiting. So this is especially important if you're a small business or even a large business. You're kind of going, well, why would I want to jump into this? Aside from the fact that you're getting this amazing talent, you have hundreds of thousands of them potentially available to you every year. Let's be quite frank, because I think a lot of companies that I talk to are like, well, how do I invest in a person to run this program? Or how do I justify that pay? So on my team, as I mentioned earlier, I have another team member who specifically oversees and manages SkillBridge. That is a salary. That represents benefits. I have a significant budget in the company then to do philanthropic work, to do marketing and advertising, to sponsor Indeed ads, and to do geofence targeted social media ads and all this stuff. So I'm spending money everywhere. And the one question every year comes back from the finance team: how do we justify this spend? And my answer is in a few different ways. One, there are work opportunity tax credits from hiring veterans and things like that. There is, again, the cost of turnover or the cost savings of us not having to go out and pay a recruiting firm $30,000 or $40,000 a head, et cetera. I'll talk about some numbers here. If I add up, so far this year, we have had or will have 20 SkillBridge candidates come through our program this year. So far, we're not done yet. Jamie is new to the team, so she's going to be ramping that number up significantly in the next year. That represents, if I'm doing my math correctly, $1.8 million in tax revenue, or I'm sorry, paychecks to people. If I'm averaging a salary number, let's say it's $70,000 a year or something like that, it's $1.8 million that's going back into the system. People are being paid this amount. If we talk about the cost savings, and this is something that I call it a cost offset back to our business. Again, when finance comes back and says, hey, how do we justify the spend? One of my answers is, if I'm getting a learning and development manager with 22 years in the Air Force for 5 months, not on my payroll, but on the DoD payroll, take that $90,000 a year salary and take 5 months out of that and put that back into my bank. Do that times 20. That is cost savings back to your business. So a lot of people aren't thinking in these terms. They're like, we're going to hire these people anyway. Well, imagine hiring, again, the best talent in the world, and they're not on your payroll. You're able to bring them in. In some cases, they're learning, they're contributing no less to your business. By the time they get done with that 5-6 month ramp up period, now you didn't pay a dime for that. And I know that that's kind of an awkward conversation to have, and it's not the intention of why we ever jumped into this. The reason why we jumped into this was because we get this great talent. We're able to take that time and train them up and get them spun up and ready to move. But there is a war for talent right now. We're seeing it everywhere. There is a shortage of people out there. Take advantage of any and all programs that will allow you to get, again, this great talent in your door, and go back to your finance team when they say, well, how do we justify building a program? This is it right here. Bring in 2 people through this program, and you've just paid for your recruiter who is going to be recruiting 20 more of them this year. So I'll stop there. That's a great way that we define the cost and the pay and the numbers that go into this.
Yeah, and I do want to add, so Candy and I have been working with 2 universities. We really want to make your job easier, because there are some case studies out there that show the investment that you're making into these programs is going to pay dividends long term. There's no question about it. So the University of Chicago and Arizona University, is that correct, Candy? Are both working on doing some economic impact reports that will be reflective of the cost savings that'll be to an employer. The other thing that I wanted to just clarify, as everybody's talking about pilots and talent and that sort of thing, there's 2 layers of that. One of them is really the responsibility of the employer, right? To make sure that you're preparing that service member to come into a job with confidence, so that they get there and they stay there long term, providing those mentors on the job to be there when they land on their feet and they get home, because there's so many other layers of things that are happening in their lives. Transition is a culture. We all know that. Most of you on the phone probably know that. Your military recruiters independently within your office are very mindful of that. So the more of those opportunities that you can provide the service member, it's really, really important. And I do say, I take it one step further, is that we don't want to throw industry standards out the window. The conversations about some folks saying, well, they don't have to have this degree anymore. There's industry standards that we must meet. We must protect those individuals coming in that workforce space too. We want them to be prepared. So really internally, there's all kinds of layers of things that you want to look at within your own industry and within your own companies. But I think there's a means to do this. Everything doesn't have to be all one lane, right? There's a happy medium for all of this. And if you look internally on how your company can perform, there's some of those bullet points are really critical. Make sure that you're preparing them so that they're staying. Make sure that you're guiding them to the right job. And if it's not the job that they were initially looking for, give them some options. The fit might not be independently with the job, it might be with the company, and there might be something else that they can do within those company landscapes. So, it is important. Matt, we talk about this a lot. Candy and I talk about it all the time. The case studies of what's happening and how these jobs are building up our economy and impacting the economy as a whole. At some point, we'll be able to share some of these numbers and what it looks like for every company. I think most of the successful programs have had layers of, quality assurance implemented into the program, but then independently, they are all seeing that these numbers are important to them and the overall economy. So it's a great conversation, and I love to hear more from everybody else on it.
The matter was, and just the caveat from the DoD perspective. So people might ask, what's the benefit to DoD, right? And I think it was touched upon earlier. Back in 2010, we were at I'll call the peak of unemployment compensation. We were paying $1.3 billion of unemployment. So another way to look at that is, here you are representing industry, but industry and taxpayers, we're the Department of Defense, and unemployment means more taxes. So, that's going against your tax dollars, your bottom line, and basically DoD having to spend money to pay individuals unemployment versus paying for, bullets, training, readiness. So it's for us, it's a readiness issue, right? Operational. So from our standpoint, so today we pay, even during COVID, we only paid a little bit over $200 million. It's because of programs like SkillBridge, awareness of SkillBridge, credentialing programs, to Chris's point. So when we have senior leaders, I'm not gonna say commanding officers, but I'll say commanding officers, and no bunts intended, CMCs and NCs and others don't know how to sell it, if you will. But educating that force is an important prerogative for our program office, but also just for the force. It's a leadership issue. Well, we can't release them. Well, what's going to happen if you don't release them, right? We can't get you more talent because we can't pay for it because we're paying unemployment benefits. We can't send that sailor, airman, soldier, Marine to training because we don't have that funding. So that's important conversation internal to us as well. It's the same conversation you guys are having. It's just a different methodology, correct? So it's, again, going back to what just Matt said, what Liz said, it's an economics question, because at the end of the day, you guys are driven by profit margins, right? And that financial question, it's the same thing for us, right? So for us, it's a budget. We have the same profit margin typically. We have to buffer 2-3% for COLA contingency planning. So that's a big thing. And earlier was mentioned, we're always evolving. And to Liz's point earlier too, we ask ourselves like, oh man, we didn't think about this before. And so we're always looking at ways to, number one, innovate to make the program more efficient and effective. So you might be the lucky few to get an additional question because, man, we didn't look at that before, when we should probably ask that question. And Candy knows that as well. Air Force comes out with some great ideas. They're flying high up there. So they like to have good things going for their airmen and guardians, and the Army does too, right? They want to make sure soldiers are taken care of, and that way, we're the mom and dad and the grandma and grandpa at the end of the day of our service members. So you kind of have to look at it that way. So we say brothers and sisters when we're serving together. So from a leadership perspective, and Chris might be smiling right now, and that's the reality of it, right? That's how we are, and that's how we operate. We want to make sure we're taking care of our brothers and sisters, our aunts and uncles, and moms and dads. So over.
Of course, while we got you there, can you talk a little bit about some of the updates that you guys are doing with SkillBridge website? I know that there's some new tools, and I will say I work a lot with Boris's office and with the administrators of SkillBridge, and I will tell you, they're not missing a beat here. He's really set up a team that works really, really well, is monitoring the programs, is monitoring the successes, and they are making changes. And Boris, can you just talk a little bit about that? I think that would be helpful for the team.
Sure. I think so. So the biggest thing that's probably coming in October is the URL is going to change. So we're going to drop that huge, I'll call huge tail, usalearning.gov, and we're going to go down to .oz.mil. So we're going to get back to the DoD enclave. We went into that for efficiency and to speed to market, if you will, right? How everybody else does it, kind of the COVID vaccinations, from that standpoint. And we intended to go to a truncated to a .gov, but and we weren't successful. So we're going to go back to what we do best and go back into our cave of DoDisms. And that's number one. So that'll be easier. And we've built out a CMS internal, so we're testing it and getting all the bugs out of that. So all of our partners will have their own login account that they can self-manage, versus right now we do a lot of things through URLs and kind of a Questera forms that Candy, Liz, Chris, and others, and Matt, some of you all know. So in the future state, if you will, you all, not you all, but everyone who's a partner will have your own account, and you can update at your own free will your information and maintain that, as a customer, basically to the system. So that way we're not the intermediary. So those are some big major changes there. Did I miss any?
That's a time management thing too, for the question raised about the smaller companies, you know what I mean? Where you don't have to go in and wait for a response every time you update your accounts. So I think that they're paying attention to a lot of what the needs of the providers are, as well as the needs of the service members who, everybody on this panel gets feedback from service members, right, guys?
So I think, if I may, so Amazon and Johnson & Johnson are what I'll call household names, although I would argue that many service members may not know all the options that they may have at those two companies. So I'll start with that. I think Cushman & Wakefield is a great example of, I've been in corporate for 20 years and I couldn't have articulated what they were really before Matt and I started working together. And so I think for especially those companies that aren't as well known from a consumer perspective, there's always this question, and Maria, I appreciate you bringing this up. There's always this question of how do we share out our roles? So two fundamental questions I always hear from service members and employers. The first one from service members that I hear is, what are all the opportunities available to me in this city, state that I'm going to across all providers? And from an employer perspective, or any SkillBridge provider, the question I always hear is, okay, great, we've got our credential, we've got our MOU, we have roles, our business is aligned. Now, how do I get the word out across all these installations? So this efficiency that we're talking about is really important. Matt, do you want to talk a little bit about, because I will say, I'm going to brag on Matt a little bit. I have service members that literally will ask about Cushman & Wakefield by name, sometimes even by Matt's name. And so I think it speaks a lot. Getting his company into the decision set is a really big step.
Yeah, thanks, Candy. I wrote a long time ago, I joke around that I wrote the book on how to build a military program in a company, because I literally wrote a book on how to build a military program in a company, and I don't publish it. I just share it with people when they ask for it. But it's like a 10-page document that talks about step-by-step gaining approval through executive sponsors, gaining budgets, using marketing tools, things like that. But one of the primary functions is, and I know that this does not relate to small businesses, because a small business will say, well, hey, Matt, I can't have my own team of military recruiting people. It's going to be tough. It's going to be expensive. Big companies can do that. Smaller companies, not so much. But it is being present and being personal and existing where your candidates exist. And simply what that means is, like in our case, it is attaching ourselves to the organizations that have the most relevant conversation right now. I mean, this is why Candy and I started talking. We jumped into SkillBridge in August of last year. I knew very little about how the program was run, at which point I sent Boris an email at some point in time. I think Candy told me Boris's email address. I sent him an email. I'm like, I just want to make sure before I put some investment in this that I'm going down the right path. And I think I asked Boris a couple of questions like, as long as I have this learning opportunity for somebody, I can keep them and plug them into a full-time role. I mean, I'm paraphrasing here, but those were the questions I asked. And we got to this point where I realized that, 50 Strong is leading this conversation right now. There are a handful of organizations having this conversation. 50 Strong is leading this conversation. I have people pouring.
You all are leading the conversation, by the way.
So when I say 50 Strong, I mean all of the relative components of this, all the people that show up on these calls. We're killing it here. And I mean that whenever we have the candidates on the line, it's 200-300 people on the phone. And then beyond that, whoever sees this media on LinkedIn. So it is being present. It's creating a personality for your organization. As I mentioned before, I've never worked in a B2C company. I've only done B2B companies. I've only done companies that you can buy if you're another company. I'm not shipping packages to your front door in 2 days. I am not making vaccines and medication. I am not selling hardware. I'm not, you know what I mean? Like, that's not what we do. You can't buy us unless you own a property or you're trying to buy a property or you need your property cleaned or something along those lines or maintained. So it is being personal and being present. I'd have to say, if I got into the nuts and bolts of where we spend money and how we do some of the things, like where we can't always be on a webinar, right? It is geo-targeted marketing, geo-fenced marketing. If you don't know what that means, it's essentially wrapping a digital fence around military bases and paying for advertising, paying for search engine marketing. So when anybody goes on Google and punches in, I need a job after the military, Cushman & Wakefield shows up in some of the top search results. Or when you're playing around on your phone and you're on Camp Pendleton in California and you're just scrolling through the news site, Cushman & Wakefield shows up there. We're showing up on military.com. We're showing up on, I'm giving away all my secrets here. If you're watching videos of kittens on YouTube, I have geo-fenced 15 military installations around the United States to now show Cushman & Wakefield's post-military careerism ad on the first 15 seconds of your YouTube kitten video. So now you can't get away from us.
Are you branding kittens? Is that what you're telling us, Matt?
What I'm telling you is that if people on military bases are watching videos of kittens, as I would if I were on a military base, I would prefer. Anyway, what we're seeing.
I just want to say that Matt's videos has shown up on my daughter's kittens video on YouTube. So it's true.
There we go.
That's awesome.
I'm glad to hear that. So some of my initial stats for these things, like I just started doing the YouTube branded videos this year. First month of run, I had something like 78,000 impressions and something like I don't know, 2,900 clicks or 29,000 clicks. 29,000 people saw my ad on military bases and clicked it. So I realize, again, smaller businesses might not have this opportunity to say, hey, we're going to go spend a lot of money. It's not really that much money, but it is like Facebook allows you, for example, to geo-fence and geo-target different age groups with different interests in different geographies. And you can pay like $20 to reach, I don't know, 10,000 people. So it's pretty standard. If you have a budget to do it, go do it that way. There are ways to reach this population, feed your advertisements, feed your media to them. But quite frankly, with SkillBridge, one of the best ways we've just had success is that we continue to talk about it in front of career-seeking, post-military or military transitioners as it goes, and existing in the places where we need to exist, like this conversation right here.
Matt, can I just add too, I think it's really important, everybody, that question about how do we get access to service members comes up all the time. And I do think it's relevant that you've got to be out there, and there are some tools like Facebook. But remember, in every community that you live in, there are family members of service members that are serving. Be vocal in your own community where the job is. Make sure that you're putting it out there in community groups, those community groups that exist on Facebook and other links and LinkedIn. You'd be surprised at how much feedback we get with some of that. Independently, I think word of mouth, good programs are word of mouth from the service members.
Right.
So there's that as well.
That is absolutely true. Something I'll add to that is that the spouse is also our targeted.
100%.
The spouse is also our target. I'm not necessarily trying to reach Sergeant so-and-so. I'm trying to reach Sergeant so-and-so's spouse or kids.
Yeah.
I want to throw another note in here. The reason why I only mentioned digital things is because we had to transition in COVID, in a post-COVID world.
Yep.
We had to transition completely from
100%.
going to events. We used to sponsor physical events and we'd be at those and traveling. We can't do those right now. So everything went digital, which is why we have such a heavy emphasis on digital.
Everybody's got a phone, Matt.
There you go.
I
would actually love to throw in there, you know, what Matt and Elizabeth were just talking about. Military members talk to each other.
Right.
I got it. There may be 1.1 million active duty military out there, but it's an amazingly communicative pool of individuals amongst the military members and spouses, whether it's on social media, on installations, whatever it is, they talk. Word of mouth is your best advertising. But I would caveat that when we talk about program management, and when you look at setting up a SkillBridge with your company, understand they're going to talk about your program as well. And so if the word of mouth that they're getting is that your program is wash, rinse, repeat, and dismiss your candidates out of there, that word will get out into the community as well. And service members absolutely will talk about that, and you'll get a net negative. So it's important when you're constructing your program. I would much rather see a really effective program that does something great for one or two than a really bad program for 50 that doesn't accomplish outcomes and mission. So just on that whole communicating thing, that's my thought there.
Yeah, I encourage those smaller pilot programs when you're just testing the waters. You know, start slow, build what you can, make it as successful as possible. Follow the other programs, but I encourage the pilot programs when you're going into SkillBridge. I think it's critically important.
Ari, you've had your hand up for a while.
I know, for a really long time.
No, it's all good.
Ari, what's wrong with us?
I know, it's all good. So I just want to say too, especially the smaller companies, once you host someone, ask to get in front of their command. Ask to get in front of their leadership, right? That costs no money to you. They'll meet with you on phone. We've done that with some of our other areas where we have previous SkillBridge participants going back to their command, talking to them when they get out of the military, and they're advocating for us. I don't have to send myself. I don't send another recruiter. They're there now in the space doing all the work. And now I'm on phone calls with commanders, XOs, and COs of bases. How can we take your service members and spouses and bring them over? Right?
Yeah.
That word of mouth is so huge. And find that niche, to your point, Liz and Matt, like those specific small pilots are great. Find what you can do best to start to make the easy win. And then from there, build up, right? Don't try and ramp up, you know, right away to 50 to 100. That's how Amazon started at a whole. That's what we were starting at Disney before I left too, was getting these little small wins to then be able to scale. And that's the key to the success. And also find ways to incorporate to your business model. Right. So at Amazon, we announced we're going to hire now 100,000 service members and spouses by 2024. Now I get to advertise to my hiring leaders, how do you want to help now our business goal? So you can pitch it to your company as well as an easy win and a ROI is, what do we want the vision of our company to be to 3 and 5 years from now? And how can you incorporate this company to that goal?
Hey, Candy, if I may, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to change topic, but there's been, you know,
we have 1 minute, Chris, just so you know.
Oh yeah, so that's why I wanted to hit this. There's been a side conversation on the pay and benefits part, and I wanted to throw that out. Donald just threw it. So without going too deep, participating in DoD SkillBridge, service members are paid all wages and benefits by the DoD. Healthcare, life insurance, unemployment compensation, SSI contribution, workers' comp is all by the federal. The host employer pays no wages or benefits, and you need to adhere to that, because if you do, you establish an employment relationship, and you then become responsible for all other federal, state, and local labor law requirements out there. So you don't want to pay them. The question on housing stipends, and there's different ways, and I'm happy to talk with anyone offline to sort of dig through this in the labor law side. But my basic on it is anything that you would have to report out for a service member, be a 1099 or a W-2 as a taxable benefit, is something you can't cross a line on. If you can give them a small something, and sometimes housing benefits may fit that, but it can be situation by situation. Anything that would go on a W-2 or a 1099 taxable reporting cannot be provided to a service member. Otherwise, you will violate the labor boundaries.
All right. Listen, I hope that those of you that have joined us today have seen that I hope this has been an incredibly helpful 90 minutes. As you can tell, we're all working really hard to share as much as we can. Why? Because the more industry partners that have opportunities, this indirectly supports transitioning service members, and that's what we're all here for. Friendly reminder, 50 Strong is hosting our monthly networking event next week. Our last 2 of these have had almost 450 service members each registering. Just like Matt talked about, we're doing a ton of marketing, paid marketing behind this to support the collaborative effort, which I think is really helpful. I also wanted to quickly give you a reminder. 50 Strong is now hosting collaborative events like this in various fashion almost every week. Please join us again. And last but not least, for those of you that are looking for the PDC information offered by Chris Thorne Consulting, we will include that in the follow-up email that you will get by tomorrow. The replay of this will be available by Friday. We also do employer sessions at least monthly. I'm very open to doing this more often if this has been helpful for everybody. With that, we're a couple minutes late. I'm so sorry. This lively bunch. I love it. With that, we will say thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you back at 50 Strong very soon. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Nice job, Candy. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate you all.